What does it mean to be of good character? This is the 13th in a series on making a mythology or philosophy or worldview for our time. And in the world's traditions, philosophies, ethics, all over the world, the image of the good character shows up. Omoluabe is a Yoruba word for someone who has good character. Junsa in China. Equivalents all over the place. What does that mean exactly? So when I was a kid, there was a bumper sticker that was popular for a while, and it said, "Don't be a dick." For some reason, especially in this country, the US, people have a harder and harder time understanding that advice, but be that as it may, it's good advice. It is kind of a low bar, though. I think we can do better. We can cultivate what the ancient Greeks and others around the world have called virtues. So let's have a look at that. And you see them in fiction as well. Some of us have used fictional characters as role models over the years. I'm thinking of, for instance, Captain Michael Burnham, who doesn't have to be the star who solves all the problems whenever an issue comes up. She brings people together, draws on their expertise, has them talk to each other, and they solve it together. That's good leadership. It's also a character virtue. Collaboration. So that's one of our virtues. I made a little list here. Not comprehensive, but that's on it. Also, empathy. So when super powerful people want to dominate a society, one of the first things they try to kill is empathy, by turning people against it. But empathy is something we're born with, and without it, we can't really be human beings. With no empathy, you're a psychopath, basically, or you act like one at any rate. So empathy, having the strength to empathize, to imagine what's happening with other people, and to have a feeling about it, that's important. That's part of good character. So empathy, collaboration. Another one is humility. Especially the humility of realizing that you don't know everything and that you could be wrong. There's a lot of people who have very strong opinions about things they're completely wrong about. So one of the things we learn along the way in higher ed, when all goes well, it doesn't always, is to be humble about what we know and always on the lookout to know better. One of the purposes of science, one of the purposes of the humanities, and all those disciplines is to have a check on what we think we know, because we don't always. So in terms of character, this looks like being humble enough to be corrected when you need it. Another one, maturity. I've talked about that in a previous video. So emotional maturity, not being reckless, not being loud and obnoxious, not going off on people. If you do all those things, you've got a maturity problem. So taking the trouble to grow up, which you can do partly by being around people who are more emotionally mature than you are and learning from them. Another character virtue would be responsibility, which goes with the one I just mentioned. Being accountable. Being responsible. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, it's my decision. Yeah, I screwed up. Responsibility. Also, learning from consequences. You know, when you can't learn from consequences, when you can't learn from the history, whether that's local history or institutional history or national history, you make the same mistakes over and over again and never learn anything. So there's no possibility of correction. Wisdom comes from all of this, and that's a virtue as well. Having discernment, seeing below the surface, being wise in the sense of having a deeper understanding of what's happening. And all of this is enriched by the ability to self-reflect. If you can't self-reflect, you won't get very far. So in fiction, we have numerous examples of people of good character. I mentioned Captain Burnham. She goes through a long journey to acquire that character, a long, hard journey. Good character isn't easy to come by, but it's possible. if you try hard, if you learn from exemplars. There are characters in my fiction who I consider people of good character. Joan Adesina is one of them. She's more on the quiet side. We don't hear too much from her, but everything she says is worth listening to. She has a quiet presence that in itself is transformative. Miriam Najjar is another character. She's a bit more extroverted than her friend Joan. She too is wise, assertive, empathic, always tries to have an eye on consequences. Other characters too. Lucas, who's the protagonist of my novel Soul Mapper, has a slate cleaned from the very beginning, meaning he gets a second chance at life because he wasn't headed in a good direction. But as he proceeds, he learns to be of good character.